Hi everyone, I'm Chef Susie with Escafe Online, and today I'm going to be making frangipane, which can be used for a filling or a cake. And it's made with almond paste. It has a rich almond flavor, and it's something that has a French origin, and it's usually made around Christmas time in France, and it's also made during the holiday season, during Mardi Gras, as a round cake with a little bean inside, and there's usually a small child that passes around slices of the frangipane cake, and the person that gets the special bean that's inside gets to be the king or queen for the following year. And the cake is decorated with a crown and flowers and some stars, and it's really colorful. But frangipane is also wonderful any time of the year. So knowing all of that, let's get started. I have my sanitizing solution for my good sanitary practices. I have my solution in my bucket with a rag, or I have my spray bottle. I cleaned my table completely before I set up my mise en place, and I'm going to clean it when I get done. Make sure that you have this in your mise en place photo when you're doing your assessment. It's really important stuff because safety always comes first. I know I say it all the time, but it really does. So knowing that, let's tuck this away under the table for later on. And we're going to get started on our frangipane. Frangipane really is one of my favorite cakes. You can use the frangipane mixture to make cakes, or you can use it for fillings, for desserts that are American desserts, Swedish, Turkish, and even the Chinese make in frangipane cake with winter melon. So it's so diverse. It's a great thing to know. You can use it for so many things. You can make a cake with it, which I'm going to show today. You can use it for a filling in danishes, or even some of your puff pastry that you made. You can fill with the frangipane and then go ahead and bake it off. Also with the tarts that we made, the tart shells and the tart dough, take your tart dough before you bake it. You can fill your shell with frangipane and put some apples or pears on top. Then bake it till it's a nice golden brown color and it springs back, and then you can glaze it with some apricot glaze. So it's really a wonderful almondy tasting sweet cake that's dense. The leavener in this is eggs. It's got lots of butter in it, and if you haven't tried it, when you try it, you're really going to love it. It's one of my personal favorites, and that's why I wanted to make it today. So one of the key ingredients in the frangipane is almond paste, and you can easily buy it in the store in a can like this. And you can even make it yourself, but you're not going to get as smooth of a texture as you will if you buy it. So I recommend buying it unless you want to make your own. You can make it with a mixture of sugar and almonds and some honey and some corn syrup or honey. That kind of helps binds it together and makes the paste. And then you can blend it in your food processor, and it's going to be a little more coarse. So if you'd like the coarse almond paste, then go ahead and make it yourself, or you can buy it in the can. So if you're buying it in the can in the grocery store, you're going to look for something like this. And what I usually do is I take off the bottom and I take off the top, because this is a really thick, dense paste, and you can kind of push it through, and then you don't have to worry about spooning it out. It's really easy and clean, and then you have your exact 8 ounces for the recipe. So with the almond paste, besides being a key ingredient in frangipane, which has so many uses, the almond paste is used a lot in marzipan, which is used in candies and many desserts too. You can roll it out and coat cakes with it, and you can even make little shapes and figurines. You can mold it. There's so many uses for marzipan, and marzipan is just the almond paste with some sugar and some cornstarch added to sweeten it. Some sugar and some corn syrup added. This is going to sweeten it, and it's going to make it more pliable. So almond paste is just a wonderful addition to the pastry kitchen. It's a little expensive, so be careful when you're using it. Just be mindful not to be wasteful. But I think that if you haven't tried it, once you try it, you're really going to fall in love with the great almond flavor. So knowing that, let's get started on our frangipane. So the frangipane is 3 ingredients. It's just the almond paste, granulated sugar, cake flour, and eggs. And the important part is how you mix this, because it starts out a little bit dense and then it's going to get looser, and you don't want to have a lot of lumps or any separating. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to break up my almond paste first, and I'm going to get that in my mixer. It smells so good. You're just going to love this. Now I'm going to be mixing this on the mixer with the paddle attachment. And then we're going to be adding some of the sugar, and then we're going to alternate the liquid ingredients with the flour, which is the cake flour. So we're going to go ahead and sift that, sifting it right onto parchment. Cake flour has a tendency to be a little lumpy, so be mindful of that and make sure that you are sifting this, especially for this recipe. And if you have a little bit in the bottom, just go ahead and push it through. Okay, so our cake flour is sifted, and like I said, the eggs are the leavener in this recipe, and that's what makes it so delicious. It's because it's nice and dense and it's sweet, and you're going to love it. And I think that we have a question. The question is, how much cake flour did I use? I used 3.5 ounces of cake flour, and I did weigh this. When it states an ounce on your recipe, make sure you're weighing it with your scale. We're also going to be using 8 ounces of sugar, 6 eggs, and 8 ounces of almond paste, and also 8 ounces of butter. And the recipe is going to be posted on Facebook tomorrow if you didn't write it down or you don't remember it. So check us out tomorrow on Facebook. So let's get started. First, we're going to be mixing our almond paste on the machine with the paddle, because this is pretty heavy when it starts out. You don't want to use your whisk attachment because you could break it. And I'm going to be adding about half of my sugar. I'm going to let this blend a little bit, and then I'm going to be adding my butter. And do we have another question? The question is the difference between cake flour and pastry flour. Cake flour is really just one of the lightest flours that you can get. It's kind of moist if you can kind of hold it in your hand a little bit, but it's also really low in gluten. And pastry flour just has a little bit more gluten in it than cake flour, so it's just a little bit stronger, and it's going to be used more in your cookies and some of your pastries. And you can make your pastry flour by adding half all-purpose flour and half cake flour together, and there you have pastry flour. The question is, what kind of sugar did I use? Just how much sugar? 8 ounces of sugar. Okay, now that our almond paste and our sugar are almost mixed together, we're going to go ahead and add half of our butter. And we're just going to let these cream together and kind of work together. And my butter is just about room temperature. It's just a little bit cool because I needed it to be a little bit stronger to kind of work that almond paste in. So as soon as this is creamed together, we're going to go ahead and add the rest of our sugar and then the rest of our butter. In the meantime, we'll be scraping this down. That's still really important. The question is, can you make cake flour at home? Not that I know of. You can do some research on it, but it's really one of the most delicate and finest flours that you usually use to mix into the other stronger flours. So I think you're going to have to buy it, and you can find it in most any grocery store. So our butter is getting incorporated with our sugar and our almond paste. This is just going to take a little while to get this all mixed in. And you just want to take your time so you don't have any lumps in the beginning, because you're kind of mixing the little bit of a dense product with a little bit of a softer product. So just have a little patience. So things are coming together nicely. And we're going to just let these cream together a little bit, and then we're going to be adding the rest of our sugar. Okay, we're going to scrape this down before we add our sugar. And do we have any questions? Everyone's a little quiet out there. So we're going to let this mix in, and then I'll be adding the rest of the granulated sugar. And then lastly, I'll be adding the remainder of the butter. And then we'll be scraping this down again. We're just going to kind of let that butter work its way in. And with our flour and our eggs, we're going to be alternating these in. And this way they'll be well incorporated in the batter and there won't be any separating. So this is a nice, easy batter, just a few ingredients, and you can really use this for so many things. We're going to go ahead and scrape this down, and our butter is just about mixed in. We've got some lumps in there that just need to work their way out. The question is, can you use dark brown sugar instead of granulated sugar? I think that with this recipe, since the cake is so dense, it could make it just a little bit too dense inside. So I would say go ahead for your first time, make it with granulated sugar, and then if you want to change it up a little bit, try using half brown sugar and half granulated sugar, and then see how it works, and then work your way through it. A lot of times the brown sugar since it has some molasses in it, it can make things a little bit more moist and a little more chewy, and this cake is already so dense and moist. So just be mindful of that, but I would definitely try half and half. Okay, our butter is just about mixed in, and we have another question. For almonds? Topping. The question is, what type of topping would you use for a frangipane cake? Anything really. There's so many flavors that go with almond, it's almost endless. You can use a cherry topping. I'm going to be using an apricot filling, and you can top it with the ganache that you've made earlier in the program. And apples or anything, any kind of a stone fruit like apricots or pears work very nice. And it's just, almonds are one of those flavors that just so many things go with them. Even the sour cream ganache, you can even make a sour cream and cinnamon topping, or the cream cheese icing would work nice too. But I always think that apricots and almonds go so nicely together, and also apples and almonds. So those are the two flavors that I would recommend. And the ganache is so nice too, and you could even make a little bit of fondant icing if you like. So it's really making the cake your own. But I'm going to show you one today, and I think that you'll really like it and you'll like to replicate it. Okay, now we're going to go ahead and add half of our flour and then half of our eggs, and then we'll repeat that after we scrape everything down. So we've got half of our flour in. We're going to go ahead and mix it. We have another question.
Do you have a brand of almond paste that you prefer?
The question is the brand of almond paste that I prefer. Actually, any almond paste that you buy will work just fine. But in the grocery store, you're going to come across a brand that's called Solo, and that's what I'm using today, and I really like it. And what I like about the Solo brand that you buy in the grocery store is it's a pure almond paste, and some of the almond pastes will grind up the like the apricot or the peach seed to add that to it for economical reasons. So the Solo comes in a pure form. And what's nice about the Solo too is you can buy a small can in your grocery store and it's only 8 ounces, and that's what we're using in the recipe today, so it's perfect. So now that I've added my eggs, I'm gonna let this mix in a little bit, and then we're gonna be adding the rest of our flour and then the eggs again.
I put my all-purpose flour in the freezer to store, and then when I need it, I allow it to come to room temperature. Is that okay?
The question is we have someone that's storing their all-purpose flour in the freezer, and then they're taking it out of the freezer and bringing it to room temperature before they're using it. And yes, definitely that's the correct way to handle that, because you don't want to use that all-purpose flour when it's ice cold out of your freezer, because you're letting all of your ingredients get to room temperature in most cases. So we've got our eggs mixing in. And we have another question. The question is with light brown and dark brown sugar. Is there a difference with the flavor and texture or just the color? With the dark brown sugar and the light brown sugar, those are sugars that still have the molasses in them. So the dark brown sugar is going to have more molasses. That means it's going to have a stronger molasses flavor to it, and it's going to be a little bit softer than the light brown sugar, and it's going to take a little bit longer to harden on you too. But if you have any problems, let's say you have some brown sugar in the package in your cabinet and you didn't wrap it up all the way, and then you went to use it and it was just as hard as a rock, don't throw it away. You can easily save it. You can take a slice of an apple and put it in there and wrap it up overnight, and when you check it in the morning, it's going to be soft again. So use that trick. And they also have brown sugar stones too that are like little terracotta discs, and you can wet those and put them in your brown sugar to kind of bring it back to life again. So sugars are expensive, and if yours happens to get hard, go ahead and recover it. It'll be just fine. So I'm scraping down my bowl again for the last time, and then I'm going to be adding the rest of my eggs, and then our frangipane mix is done. We have a question, can you make this into cupcakes? You definitely can. They're going to be a little bit denser, really different flavor, and they're not going to puff up. They're not going to cone up because this batter stays really flat. But I think it would make a really nice cupcake, and you can decorate it with some icing, and you can even hollow out the center and put a little bit of apricot jam in there. But it's going to be a little bit different. So I'm just adding my eggs, and as soon as they're incorporated, we're going to scrape this down, and then it's going to be ready to be baked. Has anyone ever made frangipane before? I'm just kind of wondering, or is this the first time?
Another question after. Do you ever add salt to the cake recipe?
To this cake recipe?
Or any cake recipe?
The question is, do I ever add salt to this cake recipe? Not this one. This is just these basic 4 ingredients. And by adding salt, you're going to be adding a little bit of flavor. But I would have to say to stay away from the salt in this recipe. Okay, and now that I knocked my paddle off, let's get it back on. And I've scraped this down completely. I was really careful to get all of the ingredients from the bottom, and it's ready to go. Okay, now that all of my ingredients are well incorporated, we're going to take it off the mixer, and it's kind of a heavy batter. And this recipe works perfect for a half-sheet pan. I'm just going to be spreading it in there. And I clean up my area a little bit as I go along. And I'm just going to be mixing this batter a little bit, kind of going to the bottom, making sure that I got all of the ingredients well incorporated. And I've lined and sprayed a baking pan. This is a half-sheet pan. And I'm just going to be spreading the batter in the pan. And then we're going to bake this at 350 degrees for about 30 minutes or until it starts to turn golden brown on top and it springs back when touched. And we have another question.
Is this more like a sponge cake, a pound cake, or a plain cake?
The question is this more like a sponge cake, a pound cake, or a plain cake? I would have to say it's maybe similar to a pound cake, but it's going to be a lot denser because you don't have a leavener in here. It's got the almond paste, which is really kind of a heavy thing, and we've got a lot of butter and just very little flour. So it's definitely a denser cake. So we're just kind of spreading it in the pan. I'm using this offset spatula too because it just kind of helps even things out when you're doing something a little thinner like this in a pan. So now that we have it kind of spread out, it's kind of a nice and thin. It's about a 1/4 of an inch thick, I would say, and it's not going to rise up very much. So we're going to put it in our 350 degree oven for about 30 minutes. And we have another question.
Can you roll it with filling?
The question is, can you roll this with filling? I wouldn't roll this cake. You can try it, but it's really dense and it doesn't seem to be too flexible. You would more use some sort of a like Dobo sponge cake that has some egg whites folded in, and those cakes can be a little more pliable. This one is a little bit denser. And I've got a cake that I made earlier. So as you can see, it's got a little bit of a golden brown top on it. And it springed back when I touched it. And it's still very thin. It didn't rise up, it didn't puff up, and it didn't peak up. So keep that in mind if you're going to be using cupcakes. It's not going to get a dome on it. It's just going to remain flat. And we have a question.
Can it be baked in an 8 or 9-inch baking pan instead of a baking sheet?
The question is, can you use a 9-inch baking pan instead of a baking sheet? Yes, definitely you can. And you can even make it a little bit thicker and do some layering, just like we're going to be doing with these thin pieces. So I'm just going to invert this and peel the paper off the bottom. I think I am. There we go. And we have another question.
Do you use mousse with this cake?
mousse? The question is, can we fill the cake with mousse? You sure can. That's a really delicious thing to add to this cake. Chocolate mousse would be really nice, white chocolate mousse, or even some apricot mousse. And yes, definitely this cake would be very nice filled with mousse. So we have our frangipane cake, and I'm just going to be trimming off the edges. And we have another question.
Is there anything that can be used to substitute the almond paste? I baked for someone with a tree nut allergy.
The question is can you substitute something for the almond paste in this recipe because of baking for someone with a nut allergy? I would have to say not with this recipe. I would try to find another cake that just doesn't have any almonds in it, because the almonds are what really make this cake. Okay, so we're just trimming this up a little bit, and we're going to be making a 3-layer cake. So ensuring that all of my layers are the same size, I'm just stacking them on top of each other, and that's how I'm making my cuts. And we have another question.
Is it best to oil and line the pan with canola oil?
The question is it best to line the pan with canola oil? You can, but be careful to make it very light. I used a spray oil, and that worked just fine too. But yeah, you can use like a paper towel and spread it on your pan. So I'm just putting my slice of cake in the bottom, and I'm trimming off the sides too, so I have a nice clean cut. And then we're going to be filling the cake with some apricot jam. And this is just a really dense, delicious, almondy tasting cake that you're really going to love. Okay. So for my apricot filling, I'm going to be using some apricot preserve filling that comes in a bag like this. So I don't know if anyone has ever seen this, but this is something that you're going to be seeing if you're working in a commercial kitchen. And this is called a handy pack. And its name tells everything about it. It's a handy little pack that you just cut the ends off of, and you can fill your cakes or your danishes with this, and you can buy these by the case, and there's usually about 22 of these packs in each case. And you can buy every flavor that they make this in: cherry, raspberry, strawberry, blueberry, lemon, and apricot, of course. You can also buy pineapple and coconut too. And this is something that you're going to be getting from a commercial supplier, and there's quite a few different companies that make these. So they're so handy. I'm going to show you how easy they are. So these packs, they just come in a box. So you just pull one out of the box, and then you're going to cut the end off. And then you just pick it up and squeeze it like a pastry bag. So I'm just going to be squeezing some of the filling, and then I'm just going to spread it around with my spatula. Handy pack, right? And these are so nice too for filling danishes. And the frangipane is also great for filling danishes. It's a nice Danish filling. You could even add some raisins or some sliced almonds on top of your Danish. So I think that the apricot looks nice with the frangipane dough, adding a nice color to it. And then we're just going to do our second and our third and final layer. This is a nice cake. It's nice and dense. It's sweet. It has a great almond flavor. So we've got our handy pack, which, like I said, these are so handy. You can buy these preserves in jars, or you could even make them yourself. But you'll definitely see these handy packs in a commercial bakery. And then we're going to put our top layer on, our frangipane cake, and we'll be ready to put our ganache topping on. Oh. Uh-oh, I made a mistake. I got so excited about the handy pack, I was putting another layer of apricot on. So we're going to be putting our ganache on top next. Okay, so that was easy. Yes, we have another question.
Do you ever use flour to line cake pans?
The question is, do you ever use flour to line cake pans? Yes, you can butter and flour your pans. That will help your cakes release nicely. You just take your room temperature butter and you can brush it on the cake pan, or you can take a paper towel and kind of rub it on the cake pan, and then just sprinkle some flour in and tap the pan and work the flour around, and then your pan will be buttered and floured. And you're going to see that in some recipes too. So I've got some ganache that I made earlier, and we're just going to put this on top of our frangipane cake. And this is a little bit of a heavier ganache because I'm going to be spreading it. And like I said, this flavor goes so nicely with the almond. And we have another question.
Can you use frangipane cake layer in a chocolate cake?
The question is, can you use the frangipane cake layers with the chocolate cake? Yes, definitely. I think it's nice when you kind of change it up and you use both types of cakes. Like a chocolate may be a devil's food, and you can alternate doing one layer of devil's food and then another layer of frangipane. I think that would be really nice because the chocolate and the almond flavors go great together. So we have our frangipane cake, and you can just decorate it with whatever fruits that you like. Orange goes really nice with almonds and apricots, so I've got some sliced oranges here. And we're just going to be putting them on our cake. And we also have some fresh raspberries. Toasted almonds go nice too with this. It's really whatever you like. Blueberries and blackberries go nice too. Whatever fresh in season. I had these raspberries and they're so nice that I wanted to use them tonight.
What is in the ganache, and how do you make the ganache heavier?
Okay. The question is, what is in the ganache? This ganache is made with just cream and chocolate, and by making the ganache heavier, you're just going to add more chocolate to it. And you're going to have different consistencies in your ganaches. Some ganaches are very light for pouring, and some are a little bit on the medium side for spreading. And then you'll also have some thicker ganaches too, which you can make your truffles with. So I've got some fruits on my frangipane cake, and I'm just going to be finishing this off with some fresh mint. And please, if you haven't tried the frangipane, please try it. You're going to fall in love with the beautiful almond flavor, and it's so diverse. You can do so many things with it. And a lot of people really haven't had frangipane. You'd be surprised. So if you make it for your friends and family, you're going to impress them. They're going to be so dazzled. They're going to say, wow, what is this? It tastes incredible. I've never tasted anything like this before. So try it out. You'll be sure to impress them and dazzle them, and let me know how it goes. And we're getting ready to wrap up. So if you have any questions, be sure that you get those in. And like I said, I'm just decorating this with some mint leaf, raspberries, whatever you like. And the frangipane is so easy. It's just 4 ingredients. Make it on your mixer. It's a lot easier to incorporate that almond paste so you don't have any lumps. And thank you so much for joining me today and sharing in my frangipane cake. And we'll see you next week. And don't forget the trip to France that's coming up in October on the 19th. It's going to be a great trip to Nice and Paris. If you go, you'll be able to meet Escaffier's great-grandson, Auguste Escaffier, be visiting the home of Escaffier, which is now a museum with these incredible sugar and chocolate sculptures. And just, you know, it's a step back in time to see where he lived and some equipment that he worked with at the time. And Nice is a very nice town on the Mediterranean, really beautiful. It's a great time of year to go there. It's not too hot, not too cold. And then off to Paris for the City of Lights. So, ooh la la, Paris. So much fun shopping and eating in the Eiffel Tower. And keep in mind that this is going to be a guided food and wine tour, and there's a different stop every day, and you'll be having some great wines of France and eating some wonderful food and visiting some amazing places. So try to make the trip to France if you can. And thanks for joining me today. And do we have any more questions?
Can you alter the flavor of the cake?
The question is, can you alter the flavor of this cake? It's pretty almondy, but you can go ahead and soak it with some different liqueurs if you like. You can soak it with some amaretto, which is just going to reinforce that almond flavor, and it's going to add a little bit of alcohol, make it a little more intense. And you can also soak it with some other alcohols like even Frangelico, because it's going to have the hazelnut, and the hazelnut and the almonds both complement each other nicely. You can even use a coffee liqueur, and you could also use some other extract flavorings, like an orange extract would be really nice with the almond, complement it nicely. Even the lemon would go nicely, and even a coconut extract or even a rum. So yes, definitely you can flavor the cake, and you're going to love this. Make the batter, try it out in a few different things, and you'll be sure to fall in love with it. It's a French favorite, and it's also a favorite in so many other countries, even here in the U.S. So thanks for joining me today. And do we have another question? We have another question.
The night before an event, and how would you store it?
The question is, can you make this the night before an event? Yes, definitely. Make it the night before, bake it off, even keep it in your pan if you want to finish it the next day and wrap it up. Or you can even finish this the night before and make sure that you wrap it up. If you're making it like I made it today, save the orange slices or anything that's liquidy like that for the next day, and then just put those on and decorate it. But you can definitely stack it up and layer it. Put your ganache on it. Let it cool in the refrigerator. Then pull it out, and you can add your raspberries. But definitely, if you're doing oranges and mint, do those right before you serve them, because the oranges could get some liquid on your ganache, and the mint will definitely wilt. So like I said, ganache it, raspberry it the night before, wrap it up really good, and you'll be good to go. And you can also freeze the layer of cake in the freezer, like even a week before if you're going to be really busy and you're having people over. Go ahead and bake it off, wrap it up really good in your pan, freeze it, and then maybe pull it out the day before and finish it, and then do your final decorating the day of your party. So I hope that little helpful hint helps. And thanks for joining me today, and we'll see you guys next week. Goodbye.